Everybody, welcome back to the Mentor Nation podcast. My name is John Abbas, and I host this show as we take you into the lives of just really incredible and interesting people in an effort to bring out their best stories and strategies. You know, as an entrepreneur myself, I find that I learn best when I listen to interviews and people just share, rather than just advice, they share their stories and some of their failures and why they made some of the decisions that they made. And for me, that's why I love to have guests on the show so that I can ask them the questions that I want to know and that I hope and I feel that you would want to know as you're building your own life and your own business. If you're here for the first time, I want to welcome you and just ask that you hit that subscribe button so that you get a notification every time I release a new episode. If you're returning, I just want to welcome you back. Say thank you so much for being here. And all of you, I just want to say thank you for spending time here. So with that being said, let's get into it. If you look at about 10 years ago, give or take, juice bars were just starting to really take off in the country. And today, I don't know how it is in your town, but in Nashville, there are juice bars everywhere, thousands and thousands and thousands of them. And if you actually pay attention, you will see that acai bowls, which is kind of an evolution of juice bars, are starting to do the exact same thing. They're starting to take off. I see them all the time. Now, I have no idea who pioneered the juice bar, but I do know who pioneered the acai bowl, and he is my guest here today. And just a real honor to have him on, and his franchises are absolutely exploding all over the country. Andrew Pudalov is the founder and CEO of Rush Bowls, which is a rapidly growing franchise redefining healthy fast food all over the country. After being burned out in his career in finance, he picked up, moved to a completely different state and started all over from scratch. Crazy story. And you'll hear that as we get into it. But, you know, seeing an opportunity that a smoothie really wasn't a replacement for lunch. You know, he wanted to eat something. He had the idea to start Rush Bowls. That was 17 years ago. And today he has 35 stores all over the country. They're opening up 15 more franchise locations this year alone. Just crazy growth rate right now. In this interview, Andrew shares his story, some of the ups and downs of starting a business from scratch. But really, my favorite thing in this interview is when he talks about leaving a really, really high-paying career and starting all over again in something completely different because he wasn't happy. And I think a lot of us listening are perhaps doing something that maybe you make really great money, but it doesn't feed your soul, and you're hesitant to make that shift and to do something completely new because it's scary, you know, especially if you're making great money and you have a family and bills. And so I just think it's really awesome to hear a story from someone who was in the exact same spot, making tons of money doing something and start over again from doing something completely different and built it into a huge, even greater success. That takes a lot of courage. And I know you're going to enjoy this interview. So sit back, relax, and help me welcome Andrew to the show. All right, Andrew, welcome to the show. I want to thank you for being on here with me today, and I'm very, very excited to get into this interview.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and in case anybody wants to know what your business, one of them, looks like from the inside, you have this incredible background. So make sure you watch this interview. And for those listening, you're the founder and CEO of Rush Bowls, a company that it's really exciting. You're redefining fast food by offering healthy choices to really busy people that are always on the go, like me and a lot of other people out there. And whatever it is that you're doing must be working really, really well because your company has absolutely exploded. And so I just wanted to start by asking you, can you just share with everybody a little bit about Rush and just the scope and the footprint of where your business is right now and what you do currently?
Sure.
Awesome.
So we really revolutionized the bowl business. I started the company 17 years ago, almost 18 years ago, Rush Bowls. So we really were the first to market really with bowls in our scale, not just acai bowls, but
Right.
all sorts of diverse menu. What we are is basically a QSR, a quick serve restaurant, where a product is really based on healthy fruits and vegetables to go, made in a bowl or smoothie format. 80 to 90% of our sales are bowls, so it's mostly bowls.
Wow.
Topped with granola, organic hemp granola generally, and other toppings. And it's a meal to go. And the idea really started from getting quick, healthy nutrition to really college students and younger adults. And then it has morphed into a much larger demographic. And when we looked at this, really started, and there's a few different ebbs and flows to this. I have a wholesale company we're in 40 states with at one point. And then right now we have 35 stores selling franchises. Some are corporate stores, but mostly are franchises. And we're opening roughly about 15 more this year. And from all over, from in Florida, Naples, Gainesville, New Orleans, you name it, we're opening there. So
that's awesome.
Very excited about the opportunity.
Yeah. And I'm most excited because, when I research guests, I love just looking at their stories, backgrounds. And like, for me personally, nothing in this world gets me more excited than when I interview somebody that was like successful at something and left it all behind, started from scratch in a completely different industry, and then built even bigger success, because that's when you know that person, it's not luck or just timing. It's like all of those things like grit, hard work, being able, like making really good decisions. And so I'm really excited about this interview. So I want to start a little bit with your background, if you don't mind, because you were doing nothing like what you're doing now in your other life. Can you share a little bit about like your story? Like what were you doing before you started Rush?
Well, I was, to put it like simply, I was a professional gambler for banks, right? So not my money, the bank's money. No, it was an extremely mathematical job. So, and I worked up to global head of fixed income derivative trading for National Australia Bank. But basically, my career started at Bear Stearns in a management trainee program. Worked at mostly at Morgan Stanley and then Credit Lyonnais, and then was global head for National Australia Bank. And what that was is basically trades for institutions starting at like 25 to $1 billion that were basically gambles on interest rates within their own portfolios, but also within cross currencies. So, if you have cash flows coming in from Europe and you want to offset that with US dollars, I don't want to get too detailed here.
Sure.
You can do an interest rate swap and take positions based on that. And people know it from some of the negative issues of it in 2007, that there was CMOs and derivatives that really collateralized mortgage obligations, and some derivatives that really put the economy at risk. But that's not really it developed into that, but that's not exactly what I was doing. But we were making calculated bets for the client and for the portfolio of the bank in these interest rate environments. But it was really a high pressure, very, very intense job. I have done it for 15 years. I built my career in that specific field. And there weren't many of us really when I left, maybe, I don't know, 100 of us worldwide, maybe more. I don't know. But it was a very specialized field.
Wow. Were you friends with people like Michael Milken, the junk bond
No,
king?
I wasn't that big of a fish. But I actually, early in my career, I interviewed there, and I was supposed to interview him. I interview with him, but I never got that far in the interview process. But he's a whole nother conversation we can talk about, because he was, I think, misunderstood somewhat. I have a strong feeling on what Drexel was trying to do and the government's intervention on that. But that's a whole
definitely exactly. And I like him. I just what I've read is, a lot of the smartest, brightest people in the world today credit him for everything that they've learned. So there's, whole other story. But I read about you that like, so you were in New York, obviously in the hustle, the bustle, you started, you had a family, and then you just gave it all up. Is that what happened? Or you just completely moved?
Yeah,
Like
well, there was a trigger.
Okay.
I lived in Manhattan for 15 years, and met my wife in Manhattan, and she was in the tower in '93 when they first bombed it. I didn't know her back then. And then on 9/11, and she made it out. And 9/11, I was in Midtown. She was in the first day back from maternity. We have an infant at home, and she sees the plane. Literally, she's high up. She sees the plane crashing, and I'm in Midtown, and it's utter chaos. And all along, I've been doing this job, which, it's super, super, you're treated like royalty, but it's super high stress. It's not for the faint of heart at any means. And that day I lost a ton of friends, and through some horrific means, jumping and everything else. And I just didn't have it. I didn't want to do it anymore. I wanted to move, wanted to get out of New York. I wanted to move to Boulder, which I always wanted to move to Boulder. I don't even know why. I was always fascinated with the West.
Yep.
And I wanted to do something totally different that I had no knowledge about. And I was lucky because I was, successful that I could take that risk, but I had a family and kids. So truly moved out to Boulder, bought a house and started a business, and had literally no job, really no income, which was terrifying on so many levels. But I knew given my personality, and I knew I would, even if I was digging ditches, I would figure out a way to make it work. And I think a lot of the success is not through brilliance, as I wish I could say it was, through persistence more than anything else.
That's all. Was this the first business that you start? Was Rush what you started right when you went to Boulder, or or was there something else first?
There was something else that I was early on with. I was playing around with a lease trading platform. So when you're in a car lease, it was lease trading, basically, that you can get out of your car lease, be indemnified, and do that. And at the time, I had a number of meetings with EGM, which was the e-commerce site of GM. And we were about to sign a deal, and then, certainly the collapse of e-commerce in '99, basically, when I was doing both. But I wrote a business plan, had meetings on this, which was kind of like a derivative structure. And I was always fascinated with technology and where things were going, because everything was moving so fast. So it was a great learning experience for me, because I wrote a business plan. I was still working, my job, but I was really facilitated in this whole type of figuring out an opportunity, which still exists out there, and there seems to be opportunity. EGM's, why they wanted it, they wanted to sell, they would do the inspection of this leased car and then release it. Basically, it was releasing.com was the name of the company. And they wanted to facilitate basically selling warranties and parts to these people that were releasing the car. So it made a lot of sense. But unfortunately, the whole e-commerce in 99, 2000, 2001 just collapsed. And the best laid plans, but it did really open my eyes that there's a million things I could do. And somewhat bored with, trading, as intense as and as mathematical it is. If you're gambling every day, after a while, it's not easy.
Absolutely. So I wanted to ask you, when you started Rush, was it more that you saw an opportunity and wanted to capitalize on it? Or was it more like, healthier lifestyle was your passion and you wanted to create an opportunity out of that?
It's not one or the other. I would say it was a little bit of both. I thought I wanted to have a healthier lifestyle. I always didn't want to, I was stuck in New York, basically, and New York's an incredible place to live, especially early in your career and early in your life. But I was always striving to get out. Unfortunately, it's very hard doing what I was doing to do it elsewhere than New York at the time, or London. So I was always trying to get out and wanted that healthier outdoor life. And,
Right.
being in Boulder, that really, it's a unique place that has a lot of educated people, has a great quality of life, and it's also near a major airport to get anywhere in the world. So that, and then I was trying to figure out what business would suit me well. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted consumer interaction. The one thing I was missing in trading all those years is there was no real consumer. It was an institution. I had a sales force that contacted those institutions. I wanted one-on-one face time with a consumer. I was craving interaction
Oh, so you
with.
like that? Okay, I
I
was
like
gonna.
that. Yeah.
Okay, because in the early part of this, it was like, yeah, I'm just, mathematical, and I'm like, wow, this must be like really out of his comfort zone. But you actually wanted consumer facing. That's very helpful.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say I'm the most social guy in the world, but I like being challenged, and I
Right.
like having it. I like chat. I like chatting in a certain way. So it afforded me to really observe food and how it was being consumed in a kind of unique way.
That's
So
awesome.
I always felt that, especially from even when I went to college, there were no healthy options. It was disgusting, honestly, in
Yeah.
really, especially if you're drinking, you're eating, and the food that you're getting, even if it's not on campus, is Burger King, McDonald's, whatever it may be. It's fast food. It's horrific food, and the food on campus really wasn't much better at
Right.
the time. And there weren't options like there are today in many of the campuses. So it afforded me to kind of say, hey, there's real opportunity here. How do we reach consumer? And then what's the hardest part is this is you develop a new product per se, and how do you have people try it? And there were, at the time, this is '04, there's a lot of smoothie companies, but no one's doing bowls.
Right.
And I really had no interest in smoothies. I wanted a meal, and I'm a big texture guy, a mouth guy. So I wanted something that was silky, but had a lot of flavor, but would have a crunch to it, more of a full meal.
Yep.
And to this day, most of our business is lunch. We do a big lunch business across the board nationally. So, and that's gave birth to that. Now, within that realm, I wanted to do something that was very diverse flavorful, and diverse flavors, should say it like that. And it afforded us the opportunity to really experiment with strong flavors, tasty flavors, but, from green tea to spicy to, all different unique flavor sets, chai, that had really a healthy, extremely healthy bent, and not preachy. You can have it any which way you want, because ultimately it's to provide a service to consumers that may have allergies or whatever
Yep.
else. So anything can be made vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and we don't upcharge for that. To this
What?
day, we don't upcharge, because if you have an allergy, I don't think you should be punished for having an allergy. And
I,
I
I
think,
love that.
I think it's, you build it in, and that's how business should be run. Make it as easy and comfortable for people to grab what they need and what they want in a simple environment.
Were you experimenting in your kitchen? Were you doing this all in your kitchen before you started your location?
A little bit everywhere, and we didn't open up with, we have like 100 different bowls, but
Yep.
maybe we have 20 or so on the menu, and we flip them in and out at times, just from kind of experience. And we're always creating new menu items and cool menu items,
Gotcha.
that, for LTOs, limited time offers. But yeah, a lot of experimentation.
That's
I'm a
that's
big texture guy, like I said. So
yeah, that's
like really interesting textures. That one thing unique about us, we grind our own peanut butter in store and make our own jam. So
interesting.
unsalted, granulated peanuts, we grind into a peanut butter, and we do butters on top of the bowl or mixed in the bowl, and it gives it a very unique flavor opposed to scooping it or anything like that. And that's, again, Rush
Wow.
Bowls is really unique to the fact that we're not like scooping sherbets and stuff like that other companies do out there. That's why a calorie count, sugar count generally is way lower. It's just the flavor is very, very different.
You can tell you have a passion for it. Definitely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I want to talk about your first location, because
Mhm.
versus, I mean, the hardest, I guess, in a lot of businesses it is. Scale obviously can come with its own challenges, but so you open up your first location. Did you self-fund the entire thing? Did you get a
Yeah.
loan? Like, okay, so
And to
self-funded.
this day, I'm the 100% owner of everything. So self-funded.
Wow. That's incredible in and of itself. So how long, like, was it profitable right away? Was it this phenomenon? Did you really have to market and spread awareness? Because you pioneered this. Like, it's not like you're one of these knockoff competitors here. You're creating this from scratch. So like, what was the growth like right when you got started?
It was pretty terrible.
I was hoping you would say that.
So, like, unfortunately, it just didn't come easy. The big challenge was getting it in, and to this day, it's getting in people's mouths, right? Once they try it and taste it, people love it. And that's where you can really see it. Starting in a college town, in literally in the college community. So we're on the hill in Boulder. It was the original location, still there. It's, like I said, 17 years, almost 18 years old. We had people try it, but no one knew what a bowl was.
Right.
And actually, it was a bigger challenge even in wholesale when we launched that. But it was really talking to the consumer, what they liked about it. Then slowly, and I mean slowly, it ebbed over, and people were like, oh, this is really good. And people started talking about it and really loving the product. And, when you're in a college town, what you don't think about is, 25% of your consumers you lose every year, right? They graduate.
Yep.
Roughly 25%, give or take. So you're constantly educating your consumer base on what the product is. And eventually, really over year, it became more of a phenomenon. And people really, oh, I got to go there, which is a great kick, from us, for me, seeing this. And I was working the store. So I was really hands-on, understanding, talking to the consumer, getting their feedback, whether I wanted to hear it or not, on what works and what doesn't. And that really helped it grow. And even another funny thing is my original manager at that store was a freshman in college.
No way.
She would help out. She's my EVP on franchising now. So, there's a real dedication and to what we believe in as a company.
Wow. I have a personal question, because I always wonder, when you start over, like, was it at all like an ego hit? Or maybe this didn't even phase you, but like, you're having this really successful career, you're making money, you're in New York, and then you're in Colorado actually making someone's lunch. And obviously, you have the vision. That's not where this is going to end up. But like, do you ever, especially in those early days when you weren't making any money and you weren't profitable and you were getting feedback that you probably didn't really like from some customers, did you ever like have a moment of hesitation where you're just like, man, like, to hell with this, I'm like a vice president? Or did you always have that vision? Just like, you know what, it's going to be a multi-million-dollar company one day, I'm not even worried about it?
No, it's terrifying, because it's also where you're coming from, right? So
yeah.
I was global head of a, derivative group. I'm wined and dined literally from every avenue. And after a while, that became somewhat appreciated but meaningless. Like, I wasn't a guy to go out constantly every night, but if I wanted to go to any restaurant, I'd be taken there, or anything really not monetary, but meals or Super Bowl. If I wanted to go to Super Bowl, or if I wanted to go to a Knick game and sit front row, someone be there to take you. Then, and that wasn't easy either, based on my background. I went to grad school, but I didn't go to an Ivy League school.
Right.
And certainly when I was working Morgan Stanley, they let me know that everyone was a Harvard MBA and I was the only one that wasn't, and eventually left them because of that. Because they're like, well, only Harvard MBAs can really excel. And I'm like, well, that's,
Well,
I'm not. And I thought this is about making money for the bank, not
right.
what your pedigree was. So I was used to kind of, muddling through and being extremely persistent in it. But yeah, when I'm mopping the floors and you hear people, oh, look at that guy mopping the floors, or look at that old guy, in a college town, I was old, mopping the floors. You're like, wow, what did I do? Did I really screw this up?
I'm so glad you shared that. Like, I really am. When the economic crash happened in '09, I owned a restaurant in Vegas and we were doing really well. Bought an existing business. We expanded it. It was a cafe that we turned into like a full blown restaurant. And, I remember when we lost the business like in '09 and, when it was doing well, I was making great money. I was taking home 25, 30 grand a month and was on top of the world for being 25 years old. And so I remember having to get a job at a casino and I'm like in this interview and this guy's just asking me these really dumb questions on why I felt like I was qualified to make like $15 an hour doing something. And I remember thinking, I'm like, God, and I just wonder if other people feel that way for a period of time when they're going from up here to down here, but there's a purpose and there's a reason for it. So I wanted to ask that.
Yeah. And you never know, like you have a vision, but you never know how it's going to turn as even the best laid plans, or you got to get somewhat lucky or a real ideology of where you think it is and why.
Definitely.
And a little bit of both maybe, but it is very hard on the soul. It's still sometimes you wonder like, and for me, it worked out, but I have to rebuild is very, very tough. And it takes a lot of energy and it's worth it. Don't get me wrong, but it's not easy. And I think somewhat the society that we're in punishes people for making changes, especially career changes. And I think it's so naive. And I think we should reward people for taking that risk, even if it doesn't work out. A lot of times things like this don't work out, but at least they did it. They tried it. They saw a different way of doing business or a different industry. Right. And I think it's awesome.
Yeah. People most of the time they just see the success, right? That's the spotlight. That's the highlight. But there's always that story like of what, they had to go through and, everything from Sylvester Stallone to Oprah. I mean, it's really, really, really crazy. So with Rush, like what year was like the big turning point? Was it year 2, 3, 4? Like when did things tip over to profitability and scale?
Well, it took time. I don't remember where the exact, where it became profitable. But it took time. It was a grind. And I don't think there was where it was really interesting is people started talking about after year 2, people were talking about this bull thing. This is really, and you're talking about 06, right? 07.
Right. Yep.
Right as the economy is collapsing, we never dipped in sales. So I knew that, wow, this was something. And people were just talking about it. And a lot of the college kids who were coming, they were going home or wherever they be. And then you would get emails from different people. Oh, we'd love you to come here, or we would love you to come here. And by then I knew that we were on to something, that people like this texture, like this meal concept, opposed to a smoothie concept, which I didn't even want to do smoothies. I was just kind of providing a service.
Wow. That's awesome. So were there any major early on mistakes that you made that could have like crippled you, but somehow you overcame it? Like, because for all the listeners, the demographic for the people listening to this podcast, they're all entrepreneurs, a lot of solopreneurs, a lot of small to medium business owners, like myself, brick and mortar. So very similar to what you're doing, considering franchising at some point. And, I look back at some of the early mistakes that I made. So I'm just wondering, were there any, like, looking back, were there any mistakes that you made, like, holy crap, like, whew, that was a close one?
Yeah, I mean, tons, honestly. And I made a lot of mistakes. One was early on, though. I was looking at a location, and it was a very high rent. And someone's like, you got to get in there. That's the,
Right.
brand new building and this and that. And I was tempted, this and that. And I decided against it. And I was lucky because I do feel it would have been much more difficult since being there, that place must have turned over like 7 or 8 times in 15 years, which is a bad sign, right? So
Definitely.
I think, who knows, but I think that would have put a lot of financial risk that I didn't want to take. And the whole business model also was risk averse in a way, right? I'm taking all this risk, but the product itself, it is really, there's almost zero waste, low labor count. You're dealing with 2 to 3 people. So
Right.
it was built to be efficient and small square footage, in out. We're not a sit down restaurant per se, where we just want people, they're seating, but limited, and it's really for people to go in and out. So I think that would have been a big challenge for me to overcome if we did that other spot. Even though I always tell a lot of consumers, I would say franchisees, location, location, location. I don't buy into that 100%, because right nowadays, when 30 to 40% of your business is probably takeout or delivery, I think location is very important, but more important is how it's run, how you reaching the community, how you getting the word out. And I think, obviously, like everything, it's all somewhat gray.
Yep.
But I wouldn't just facilitate location, location, location means everything.
Gotcha. When did you open your second location? Do you remember?
Well, right when we started franchising was really the second. In between that, which was not a success story yet, I did a wholesale line. And we were in 40 states with Whole Foods and Costco.
Oh, wow.
And that was very challenging. And that was very interesting. And I learned a great deal about distribution and everything else to only help as we grew franchising. And that happened basically in 2010. I started freezing the bowls that we were making in store to get people in and out faster. And then I tried to do that, and then basically kind of liked it. We kind of changed the formula for that type of frozen environment. And I met with Whole Foods on Pearl Street here in Boulder. And that was really at a time when Whole Foods in particular was pioneering new foods and taking risks with different entrepreneurs. Yep. They do a little bit with Amazon, owns them now, so it's less, but they're willing to do it. And I did that to 2016 or 15, basically, end of 15, early 16. My co-packer went out of business, out of the blue, overnight. So we had all these orders, and we couldn't fulfill them. And eventually we just said, all right, it's going to be too hard. Franchising just started taking off. I'll relaunch this at a later date with, kind of a different mode of operation. But it was an incredible learning experience on so many fronts, because a lot of the unique flavors, getting that word out, communication, was different whether you're in Ohio or anywhere else, right? And I'm just saying Ohio, we were in the Midwest, but you had people who still didn't know what a bowl was.
Right.
It's easier today. People really understand it, but we spent so much money on just education, which is always very difficult. Not only that, we were in the frozen section, and there's a barrier to entry in frozen, right? There's a door you have to open in a cold aisle to take a product out. Even though we had a lot of success within that, there's significant challenges to being on shelves, and then the shelf fees and everything else.
That's so interesting.
Mm-hmm. But that's why I loved all of it so much, because, basically 3 businesses, right? One's retail store, just operating a retail store. One's franchising, and one's, wholesale distribution to, mega markets, and they're three distinctly different businesses. And if they didn't share a name, I would think almost they have nothing to do with each other. So I like to be challenged significantly on a lot of fronts. And that was really interesting and fascinating at the same time. And because I had to learn a lot. There was no one mentoring me, unfortunately. So,
man, that's so crazy. A lot of really great lessons here. Cause a lot of people think that, oh, you get into Whole Foods and you're done, I'm successful and it's crazy. And you have a completely different take. There's a lot of work that comes with that. It's not, oh, Kroger, Whole Foods is going to do all the work for me. And it was one of my first episodes. It was a really incredible story. It was the CEO of Life Aid. And he built his energy drink brand into, well over $100 million a year. And he had the toughest time with getting into gas stations because there's all these energy drinks. And, the way he ended up having success is he started focusing on like CrossFit gyms and things like that. And he would ship the refrigerator to them for free if they would stock the drinks. And that's how he ended up having massive success. And the same thing, because the guy that created Dippin' Dots ice cream, I don't know if you've ever heard of that brand, but he lives here. And it was the same thing. They were in all these theme parks and, just their model, you think I'm in Disney World, I'm going to be, he was losing money. And then he started shipping like, sub-zero freezers to gas stations all over. And then right when they walk in, it's the first thing they saw. And ended up becoming huge success. And so it's just really, really interesting. I just have a couple other questions for you, Andrew.
Sure.
You spent a lot of time investing in or just in that world, looking at companies, spend a lot of time building your own business. Just for all the listeners out there, what do you think, your opinion, are some of the really crucial characteristics of successful entrepreneurs? If you had to boil it down to maybe 3 or 4 things that you've seen that you've had to do, what would you say?
I would say persistence, adaptability would be number one, number 2. And having, I would say, a vision, but also an open mind. So, and sometimes that sounds simple, but if you have a strong vision, and generally you're an entrepreneur or whatever, you're alpha, right? And it's very hard to you got to be listening. And you got to be hearing what people are saying. First, to me, is you got to really be persistent. It's hard. Right. There's a million of great ideas out there, million, way better than any ones I came up with. But I will tell you, you got to be persistent. You got to follow through. You got to believe in it. And if you're not 100% a believer, that's probably not something you should follow. And then after that, I would say you got to be adaptable, because usually in like in most businesses, it's not the first idea that really makes you success. It's the second or third that come off the idea of the first one. So, whether change, how we adjusted a bowl flavors and this and that, maybe that, or even wholesale, whatever it may be.
Yep.
It's always the second or third idea that really generally makes people successful. And like I said earlier, you got to have an open mind and be willing to, grow with your people, take their opinions, whether you disagree with it, you gotta, kind of listen and see where that takes you.
That's awesome. I have 3 final questions, quick questions. First one is, what does it take to open up a franchise in a city? I say I would want to do it. Like, what's that look like?
So generally, there's a franchise fee of if you do one store, $39,000. Build out for us is really low. It's basically, build out and equipment and franchise fees. It should be roughly around $200,000 and up, depending on where you're located. But generally, it's on the lower side of that. And then, that would be build out, design, a franchise fee included in that. And it's all in the franchise document.
Awesome.
So, and then, you grow with it from there. It's a low barrier to entry for our business model, but it's also, I would say, one of those business models that, the average ticket is $15, say. So it's easy to recoup, especially when you have, zero waste and low employee count. So a lot of the impact of certainly everyone's feeling the impact of labor, but it's minimized to a certain degree in Rush Bowls. Also, we don't have a
huge.
back of the house. You're a bartender serving healthy food in many ways. So it's more attractive for a lot of people.
Yeah, I can't tell you how crazy important that is. Like, I just remember when I had my coffee shop, my cafe, and your average ticket's $5 and they want to lounge there for half the day. You're like, oh my God. Like, you don't realize some of the mistakes until you're just in the middle of it, how crucial it is to have a $15 ticket size and to be on the go and not have to have a big location. I mean, it's just really, really crazy. My second question is any plans for Nashville? Didn't see one on there.
Well, we think that's that's an area we want to grow in general.
I love it.
I know we have New Orleans opening and Birmingham, Alabama opening within the next couple of months. That's definitely a high area that we'd love to grow in. So.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that are entrepreneurial, so I can't wait for them to listen to this because I think bowls are a really great idea. I don't know him really well. His name is Dan Fleshman. I follow him because he's really great at social media, and he invested in Everbowl, and right. they've grown, and I love the concept. Bowls are so good. I had one. I never even knew what it was until I was flying, and I think it was maybe Dallas or Austin. I was at the airport and there was a company and I had one and I was like, oh my God, this is so good. And there's nothing that I've seen really in Nashville. A lot of smoothie places, tons of juice bars. Every corner has a juice bar, but I've not seen any bowls, well, especially where I live in the suburbs. So yeah, just wondering. My final question, Andrew, is, what's the best place for people to follow you, your company? Somebody listens to this episode and they're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Where's the best place to get information on franchising and the company? And then maybe if they just want to follow you as the CEO and what you're putting out in the world, like, is there a good place to do that?
Sure. Rushbowls.com. That's RUSHBOWLS.com. Rush and then bowls, one word.com. Awesome. Has a ton of information about us, franchising, about myself. But there's tons of information there. They can we have our headquarters office. That's 720-487-9317 is our corporate office. There's someone always there to answer your questions about franchising, whatever it may be. But certainly, appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, this has been awesome. I really appreciate your input, the lessons, just the wisdom and the takeaways are going to be incredible. But we also got to learn about your company and the journey to building that to success. So thank you so much for being on. And it was absolute pleasure. And I can't wait to publish this and put this out to the audience.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate being on the show, and I love watching your podcast. So
thank you.
I really enjoyed, as we were mentioning before we went on. There's really incredible stories there. So